Hi folks, Slipjoint here. Now if you watch my channel you might have seen a video that started exactly like this last time with what was apparently the same box in the opening. Isn't the same one, that was the one we had last time. But it is another Viper knife. This one is the Viper 5994 CG, which you can see I got it from Heine Haynes Lorax Limited, and this is the Viper Hug M390 satin full TI 2M, don't know what the 2M, canvas verde, canvas green canvas micarta, techno cut. Did I say techno cut on it? Yeah, it did. So it's the same box as the other one, and it's the same contents in it. There's just a plastic bag and some instructions, and nothing more exciting than that. And the instructions just don't really tell you anything. Warranty, I suppose, is what's there. Now, this knife is the Hug. Last time it was the Turn. This was the Turn of the Turn. Now it's the Turn of the Hug. And the Hug comes with a little slip, and I got this back last month, so I was carrying it. It's kind of I've kind of been carrying the Turn more, but this one isn't a belt slip. The Turn had a slip that could go on a belt. This is just a pocket slip, but you know, I think it's actually quite nice, and as a pocket slip it works really well. The downside to the one for the Turn is I found that when it's on your belt, because it's quite soft, trying to kind of put the knife in and not fold over one or other of the lips of it was awkward. But actually, when this is in here as a pocket slip, it's dead easy to put it in there. Now, there are some similarities to the Turn in terms of the construction of this knife, in that it has one-piece bolsters and frame, and again you've got a crowned back spring that you have there. But as you can see, the actual frame of the knife has just been milled out to put the canvas micarta in, held in with a couple of screws. So that means that the actual construction screws are all hidden, which is quite nice, but you still end up with these two screws holding on the cover. I suppose that's inevitable. It's a modern fusion slip joint knife. You're always going to have this big pivot, which, you know, I kind of find a bit ugly, but it's sort of necessary. Hard to know how else you're going to do it, because if you pin that together, then you can't take these things apart. Now with the Turn, that really matters because it's got ball bearing pivots. This has, I think, just washers. Now, I'm not taking it to bits, but I think it's probably bronze washers. But they're nice and smooth anyway. Certainly smooth enough for a slip joint knife. Now, also you can get the Turn with green micarta. I don't think you can get this with the ram's horn. I think if I had, that probably would have been what I would go for. But there are actually quite a lot of alternative materials for this knife. Has a really good strong action. I let that one down a bit, didn't I? You didn't get to hear that click. So it's got a good solid thunk of an action. This is called, as I say, it's called the Hug. It says on there, Hug, made in Maniago, Italy. Again, Maniago being the sort of the equivalent of Sheffield. What Sheffield is to England, Solingen is to Germany, Maniago is to Italy. It's the home of Italian knife making. So we have a nice satin M390 blade with a nice swedge at the top. So there are certain design cues that are shared very much with the Hug, and one could be forgiven for thinking that they're by the same designer, but they're not. This one, and again, just to confuse, it has a symbol which is an S. Also got the M390, but there's the designer's mark is S. But in this case, it's Sasha Thiel, who This is based on a custom knife that he does. There was one on Instagram the other day. Somebody showed it, and you can really see that they come out of the same designer's mind. Very similar blade shapes, very similar handle shapes, very similar size. I think this is very slightly smaller, I think, than the original, but there's not a lot in it. This one is, of course, a straightforward slip joint. It's under 3-inch cutting edge. I may say something about that in a minute. So it's UK friendly. I don't know if the term UK legal is a real term. I think it's probably a bit dodgy. Inside there, which you can probably see, there's a stop pin. So there's no blade wrap with this. It's nice and straightforward. The action and centering are pretty spot on. It's got half stop. It's one of those half stops that will throw the knife right into your finger if you're holding the knife when you fold it. That bit of the bottom of the blade there fires into your finger and will cut you because it's very, very sharp. When it's closed, centering is spot on, and it's pretty rigid in that. It's not like a traditional slip joint where you can probably move the blade around a little bit. It's pretty solid, and as I say, it's got these titanium bolsters. Now, I'm not quite sure how I managed to do this, but at some point I managed to scrape that bolster, and there's not a lot you can do about that. I mean, you can't really polish it out. I could send it and you'd have to get it polished and then bead blasted. So that's kind of, when it's done, which I think is a shame. You know, if you have a more traditional polished nickel silver bolster, yeah, they get scratched up, but you can get a bit of polish and you can take that you can take the scratches back out again really quite easily. It pays to keep it in the pouch if you're going to have it in your pocket. I think that's probably quite important. But anyway, I do like this knife. I mean, it's a nice knife to use. It's got a pretty good sort of size in the hand. I find, I probably don't have the strength to pull that open just using pinch strength. I can just do it, but it's hard. Once you've got it open in hand, I've got pretty big hands. I mean, I have extra large hands. For a UK legal knife, that's probably as good a size as you're really going to get. You don't often get anything much bigger than that. The ergos are fairly neutral, and of course there's no clip. Again, this is one of these things, if you get the slip instead of a clip, which I quite like. It's very much ambidextrous. The only non-ambidextrous part of it, you've only a nail nick on one side, so that kind of determines a show side and an off side, which I think there aren't many companies that get over that one. Fulton even do it. They have a nail nick on each side, and of the Italian makers, Lion Steel are very good for putting double nail nicks. I do like the action on this, I have to tell you. The Fulton even. I wish if we didn't have these ridiculous rules about locking knives in the UK, this would be my everyday carry knife. Really, really like it. Anyway, so green canvas micarta, you can oil that, and as you use it anyway, the natural oils of your hand will darken it. It's one of those nice materials that as it wears, it just gets better. It doesn't wear out, it wears in. And the other one I should have got out before I started is the Benchmade Proper. These knives are not really comparable. I mean, on paper they're comparable in that they're similar sizes. They're both sort of, you could call that a modified Wharncliffe. I think that's probably more akin to a modified sheep's foot, but it's a bit. But they're sort of similar sizes. They're both green micarta, and this micarta, I've had this one for a couple of years now. It really wears in, as I say, rather than wearing out. And I'm quite sure that given time, the hug will look just as good. Unfortunately, I think the bolsters will get scuffed up, and there's probably not a huge amount you can do about it. One of the things I do like about the Proper is the fact that it's all just micarta. I also prefer the way they've done the hardware on this, and you've got smooth hardware on one side, and you stick with the minimum number of screw heads that you need on the other side, whereas this ends up with 6 screw heads, 3 on each side. This is much tougher action too. The Proper has what is often described as a proper action. In other words, it's a bit rubbish. It's really light in the pull, which I suppose is good for me. It says 30V2. I like S30V. I'm coming over to M390. It does seem to work. It is a good quality steel. It's not too difficult to sharpen, and it holds an edge very well. And so I'm very happy. M390. That's probably all I really need to say about this little hug. It's fairly straightforward. As I say, it's available with double bolsters, or you can have it with single bolsters. The green micarta was in stock in double bolster. That's why I have a double bolster. The single bolster might have been nice. One without any bolsters at all might have been nice as well, like the Proper. I'm thinking, I haven't got the Viper key, but I would quite like the Viper key, and you can get that in all micarta, and I'm thinking that might be the one to go for. Haven't got one yet though. Kind of everything, unfortunately, much as I might like to. So anyway, there we are. That's all there is to say really about the hug, I think. What I didn't show you the size. Let me just remember. My head wasn't screwed on. If my head wasn't screwed on, I'd forget that as well. Yes, in terms of this, I did mean to say this. In terms of cutting edge, you're 2 7/8. In terms of overall blade length, you're 3 3/8 or 3 1/4. Now, whether this matters or not, I don't know. The legislation in Britain is very specific in that it says a cutting edge, and I think that is probably because there are knives where it would be very difficult to decide what the cutting edge and what the blade is. And I have an example that I wanted to show that kind of does this. Now, I've not done this as a video yet. It will go on my fixed knife thing, but this is a custom knife. It's a Japanese-made custom knife. Now, the question here would be, how long is the blade? Now, the cutting edge is fairly straightforward. You could take it from here, and it's 3 3/4, and that's fairly indisputable, I would have thought. It's a fixed blade, so in a way it's irrelevant, but it does show a point. And the point I'm trying to make is this. From here to here is one piece of steel with some stag scales and red lines put on. But you have this large bolster where it's still the same piece of EG10 steel, but this is clearly not a blade. But if you're saying, if that's not a blade, that's not a cutting edge, obviously, why would you include the ricasso in that, in the blade length? And if you did say you're going to include the blade length, why is the blade length not the full length of the blade, which comes back past the pivot here? So why isn't the blade length on this measured all the way back to this point here, where the blade comes to? Why would you arbitrarily take it from the bolster? And why? It doesn't become clear cut. And any idea, because the case that came up which actually related to a screwdriver, which is not a bladed article in terms of the Offensive Weapons Act. That's also been shown in case law as well. So if this is... the argument put up by the judge was that there's no point in arguing about what's the sharpened blade length or sharpened edge length, cutting edge length, because it's patently obvious that with the screwdriver, the whole of the blade, right from the handle, is a blade. Well, I think that actually that creates more complications than it solves, because what is the point at which you measure the end of the blade? You know, in here, one could, in the sin here, you could argue that the blade length goes all the way back to here because it's one single piece of steel. Equally, you could argue the blade length in here goes all the way back past the pivot because it's one single piece of steel. Or you could measure it to the bolster, or you could measure it to the bolster here. None of which makes any sense at all. The only thing that makes any sense is, and this is why I think they put it into the legislation, the cutting edge. You measure the cutting edge, that's fairly clear, straightforward. The sin does slightly throw things off in that it's slightly difficult to tell where the cutting edge actually ends. It's probably about that point there. Anyway, we'll have another look at that one another day. But for today, let's just say that this has a cutting edge of 2 3/4 inches, which is what it says in the legislation. It has an overall blade length of 3 1/4, an overall length of 7 1/8 inches, which makes it a good UK carry knife. And I've been carrying it, and when I've been out of the house, unfortunately, I can't carry my lockbacks. Anyway, there we are. If you like this stuff, and sorry that got a bit convoluted at the end, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see some more knives, then please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. And I think that's, stabbed myself. And I think that's us for the hug. Thank you very much. Bye.